All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was a quick scene change. And it is a pleasure for me to be able to introduce someone very much a rarity these days in Washington. He's a special guest, Dr. Mike Sfraga, who is here today. First and foremost, has a PhD in geography. He's a geographer. I think that means a lot. Our habits of mind are formed early in school and they carry with us. He's a man of science. He did his PhD at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. He has been at the University of Alaska, a student, a professor, a dean, a vice chancellor, and he is today the interim chancellor of the University of Alaska at Fairbanks. Busy man who came to see us nonetheless, which I think is really a great statement of your commitment to these issues. Mike is also the one and only U.S. Ambassador at Large for Arctic Affairs, appointed by the Biden administration in 2021. This was a unique role because it hasn't been filled since, and I know you might talk a little bit about that, but was a very distinctive role, and it took many years for us to get to the point of having someone in that role, but he was well prepared. Mike was my colleague at the Wilson Center, the founding director of the Wilson Center's Polar Institute, former director of the Global Risk and Resilience Program that we had at the Wilson Center. He was a member of the board for the Fulbright Arctic Initiative, which gave a lot of important research funding out, and then became chair of the U.S. Arctic Research Commission. But through all of that, he has now returned home to Alaska, but is today home in Washington. I hope you feel at home. Thank you very much, Mike, for coming, and over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for enduring, staying for the last 15 minutes of this get-together. I have 15 minutes, right? It says here an hour and a half. Okay. Thank you very much. As a geographer, I would love to show you some maps, but you're going to have to visualize with me a little bit as I talk through this. These are closing comments for your day-long program, which I was not a part of. So this ought to be really interesting, whatever happened, or not, I don't know. But I'm familiar enough with the issues of the Arctic, my friends and colleagues in Greenland, the Faroe Islands, the Kingdom, the circumpolar North, and living in the Arctic brings you a different perspective. So I'm not sure where I'm going to go with this riff. I've made some notes, but I have come from a series of meetings that started at 6 a.m., which touched on a good portion of this last panel and the very agenda issues that you have gone through. So if we're going to look for a summation of the conference you have had, I am going to not meet your bar. If you're looking for additional thoughts and perspectives, maybe I can provide some, along with an interesting parallel. So as an Alaskan, we share a DNA, obviously, with Canada, with Greenland, with Iceland, Norway, Sweden, but there is this idea of the North American Arctic. We are bookends, and we share a lot with Northern Canada and with Greenland. There's a special relationship between Alaskans, Northern Canada, and Greenland, especially Greenland. We've had student exchanges, programs, mining, training, which we're looking to increase. We share a lot of these challenges. We, too, have vast resources of critical and rare earth minerals. We, too, have vast resources of LNG, which, by the way, we cannot get to. We're sitting on an incredible store in our North Slope of LNG, and we cannot get to it. I burn diesel 10 months a year, as do most of our communities in the state of Alaska. When it comes to mines, we have some. In fact, this pin of Alaska has gold nuggets in it from a mine just north of my home. So we can mine, but we can't mine because we don't have roads and we don't have affordable energy. There is interest. Commodities markets drive everything in our state. And for 60 years, we've been sucking oil out of the ground and sending it outside to get refined. And then it comes outside, means America, and then back to the state of Alaska. So I get to pay twice for a resource that runs right by my doorway. So we have a lot of complicating factors here. I agree that Greenland, nor Alaska, nor Northern Canada will ever replace what China is currently doing, but we are part of the equation. And that's been the focus of my meetings today in the Capitol with not just my delegation, but with members of Congress across the board and with the administration. Later on this afternoon, another meeting in a very powerful office that is painted white to talk about these particular issues. This last panel to me is about national imperatives, whether it's for the United States or for Canada or for Greenland. These are international imperatives. I believe these are national security imperatives, just like energy security, critical and rare earth. We're not going to beat China tomorrow. Maybe we never will, but we sure as hell can diversify our collective portfolios, which has been our message in the state of Alaska. It's been our messages with our Canadian friends, certainly our message with our friends from Greenland and the Kingdom. We simply can't wait anymore. China's too far ahead of us. And we worry each day about, well, we know how the cartoon has played out with other parts of the world. When an adversary has control of a market, it is not a good look. It doesn't help with our workforce development. It doesn't help with our economy. It doesn't help with our collective security. So there's so much to share here, fortunately and unfortunately, with our colleagues in the North. But since we just came off of an economic development panel, we're too are looking at critical minerals and LNG in the state of Alaska to make us more viable than we are today. We have one thing in our state, and that's oil. And if your state, if your region is dependent on one thing, that's not good. We have not done any, relatively any, value add in our chain, pick your particular product. Like I said, oil gets through the pipeline and then goes elsewhere to get refined, and maybe it comes back to us as gasoline, diesel fuel, or av fuel. We just don't have it. And so when I think about mineral development, resource development, I think about it, we all think about it in a complete chain. Because when we built our pipeline, and the reason I'm focusing on the pipeline is because that was supposed to be the unicorn for the state of Alaska. Okay? It wasn't a unicorn. It was a helpful, something like a unicorn. It was very helpful. It helped us go from a territory to a state. It funds our education. It funds a lot of things. But it hasn't transformed the state to what it could be. We never built a diversified economy. And now we have a chance, at least in our state, between an LNG pipeline, which could be developed. It's in discussion. The governor believes he'll have a decision here at the end of the year. And critical minerals. Those are the two things we see that will help fuel the state of Alaska, hopefully for decades to come. But when I listen to discussions about Greenland or Canada, you could just insert Alaska or whatever. It's the same issues, including developing a workforce. Greenland has 57,000 people or so. We have about 700,000. Yeah, we have more, but we don't have the roads. We don't have the energy. We don't have the electrical lines. We don't have the workforce. We don't have. And our workforce will likely come from elsewhere. We need to diversify that workforce, but we have the same things in common. I'm telling you all this because when I speak, like I did most of today, about these issues, two places I brought up as the analog: Northern Canada and Greenland, because I do not think this is just one country's issue. I think this is a swath of allies and partners working like the agreement with Australia, working in an AUKUS kind of framework, working in a regional framework, working with I have called, is this helpful, by the way? Is anybody really, okay, yeah? Or are you just being nice to me and going like this? Okay, yeah, very good. It's the best you've heard since I took this microphone. Come on, all right. Because I think we have to think, as Chris said, and Chris, it's so nice to be with you again, my friend and my colleagues here. In what I have used, look, this is shtick, but what I have used as the arcs of the Arctic, the way in which we think about the North, and I think about the North in these four arcs, and my arcs are from Alaska to Canada, to Greenland, to Iceland, Norway, Sweden, throughout Europe, into Denmark. I think about that arc, the North American European arc, whether it's in our collective defense, it's in our economic development, it's in the support and the security of our people, whatever it is, that arc to me means something. That's a rule of law. That's Exim Banks. That's you name it. There's that other big arc out there called the Russian Federation. We won't talk about that at the moment. There's a Pacific arc that goes from the South Pacific, the Indo-Pacific, the North Pacific, right up through the Bering Strait. And there's another arc, which is the Atlantic, South Atlantic, North Atlantic, GI-UK gap into the Barents. That's how I view the North. And that's how I see, if there was a map behind me, which I should have brought, if I were to highlight those arcs, Greenland shows up on those arcs because we are interconnected. That's the way in which I think we need to think about investment, our collective defense, our collective energy needs, our collective mineral resource needs, the needs of our people, healthy communities. That's how I see this. And so I don't know, I hope we don't separate what does Greenland need and want important, obviously, but how do we leverage their expertise, their resources for them in the way they would want it to be developed? And how do we invest in them the way they would want to be invested in? And what does that mean for us to diversify our own portfolios? So that's just from that last conversation. I'd like to back up a little bit, and I won't take too much of your time, and this won't be pejorative because I was not here for the entire program, and I already gave you the 4 arcs shtick. But in thinking about the way in which we approach Greenland, I think we need to be thinking through the filter of what does Greenland want? And I'm sure this has come up throughout the day, because in speaking to my friends in Greenland, what they want is what we want. We want security. We want to be able to have a set of communities that reflect their values, their needs, but this is really hard to be able to build Greenland the way they would want Greenland to be built, the way they would want Greenland to be governed, when there's so much pressure on a very small place in terms of population, but so prominent in our collective needs and our collective shared security. Partnering in Greenland, investing in Greenland, leveraging their expertise, their resources, again, in the way they want it, versus other narratives about foreign policy related to Greenland. I won't go there, but I'm going to go there. I'm going to go there in Mike's way. To me, it makes total sense for us to invest in our partners, invest in our allies, do it in a way that is respectful, do it in a way that is quick to the finish line, quicker to the finish line, and I see this in this way. If the kingdom provides about $500 million US or more in a block grant, my pitch has been, wouldn't a great US foreign policy be, Mike's opinion, that we take, I don't know, 10%, 10% for the United States every year invested in Greenland, 10%. And Greenland gets to say what that looks like. Is it in their civil society? Is it in military capacity and defense? Yeah, I'd vote for that too. But if you took $50 million a year for 10 years and built capacity that would ensure more security for the North American Arctic, more resource development for the North American Arctic, more stability for the government of Greenland, boy, that sure would be, in Mike's opinion, a really strong investment. And if the bottom line for the United States is our security, what Greenland means to our security, I would argue that investing that kind of money, which is in the grand scale of things, not a lot, I don't know that you have to worry about Greenland ever looking elsewhere. If the United States did that, the EU did that, we expedited some investments there, we take a look at frameworks like an AUKUS framework, like our agreement with Australia, just a fundamentally different way, different approach. To me, that's a stronger approach. And I have tested this in Munich, and I've tested this at NATO, and I've tested this elsewhere. I would just say that that to me is a purposeful way to not just execute foreign policy, but investment in our collective defense and energy and other imperatives. I would argue, since I'm currently the interim chancellor of a university in Alaska that I call America's Arctic University, I say that for a reason, because we are. We do about $250 million to $300 million in Arctic research. We've got our own research, ice-capable research, icebreaker. We've got our own rocket range. We've got a lot of stuff all built over 100 years for now. Its time has come. So we spent a century building a university for today's Arctic. I would argue, even though we have agreements with our Canadian allies and with Greenland, we need to jack those up. I see a lot of work that can be done in mine training of workforces that we have ability to do along with our Canadian friends. That would be an investment in Greenland. And we would learn a lot from our Greenland friends back this way. So it's not just a one-way street. I think there's a role for higher education and research institutions, yes, for Greenland, but again, for this North American Arctic. I just see it, and I've seen the power of coming together, even at the subnational level, where maybe at the national level you can't move the dial because things are really complicated, but at a subnational level, you can actually do things where our governor has worked with Canada, is interested in Greenland, things along those lines that we as a university, me and my former positions, really pushed on because I think there's some value there for us to do. I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of other things aside from I want to just highlight two other things. One is this issue of data. Like Greenland, Alaska, and good portions of Canada are data poor. We know more about the moon than I do about my own state, and I have more coastline than the rest of the United States. I do not have good models, whether it's minerals or oil and gas, although oil and gas is far better than our mineral maps. But we're still trying to catch up to exactly where our minerals are and best ways to get to them. That's a challenge for us. Again, the scale. We are 365 million acres with a population of 750,000 without really a road system. So it's really tough. So that issue of data is really important. And I know our USGS has worked alongside Greenland. They're also working alongside of the state of Alaska's geological survey to figure out what we have, what capacity we have to get at those resources, and then once you get them, what do you do with them? Where do you process them? And as has been noted, a lot of that happens in China or elsewhere where maybe environmental standards aren't what we all would like. We would like to be able to do that here in the United States where there's much more, this better regulation. And finally, this issue of partners, when I talked about these arcs, it's not just Alaska, Canada to Greenland or Greenland to Canada and Alaska. I really do see the arc going to our Nordic and European allies and partners' investments. But I've talked to my friends in Asia, and there too is an interest in investing in this North American Arctic framework for diversifying our portfolio, but also their portfolios as well. So I can't sum up your conference because I was not here, but I can try to perhaps bookend with a little bit of personal perspective, share with you that my university is very, very active in this issue right now. 2 days, these next 2 days, I will be meeting with all of the federal agencies who have anything to do with oil, gas, or critical minerals, because I need them to invest in the state of Alaska, and I have the institution that actually can do everything from the engineering to the mining investments, on and on and on, and the basic research. That is something that I want to talk to my friends in Greenland about. We actually have the capacity to help. A lot of that hasn't been informed by our Canadian colleagues. But that's what I am doing here. So I find it really interesting, fascinating, and maybe even with a smile on my face, that here we are talking about Greenland, knowing the relationship with Canada and our collective struggles, and I'm here in my own capital from Alaska making the same argument that I need investment, roads, energy, workforce, capital. I need to draw capital north for Alaska, for the United States, but also for the North American Arctic as well. Chris, I'm going to leave it there. I have no idea if any of that was redundant, and if it was, maybe I just highlighted it and I foot stomped it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the question. That's great, and thank you for making an effort to be here. And you were not this was great. My question is, you have the University of Alaska, and I'm sure you have expertise that few universities have. What other universities could you partner with in Canada or the US that you have enough in common that would be worth exploring and or ultimately someday federal funding as a consortium?
That's a great question. And thank you for saying I did well. Really should have recorded that. We have, first of all, we have great relationships with the University of Colorado School of Mines. And even though they're down here in the South, they've got great expertise. Alberta is of particular interest to us. The Canadians have expertise that we tap all the time, and they tap our expertise as well. We find that we have a lot of visitors from other, not just universities, but other countries that come to Alaska to see how we do things. So it's always interesting to think we're not doing enough, and it turns out we're actually like doing a lot. We just don't know it because we're frustrated as hell that we can't move faster and we can't get the workforce. I mean, that's a huge thing, is get our people to work and train them up, and it's a chicken and egg thing. So we've talked to universities and research institutes about how you sequence the potential for something, but sequence small populations to try to train them so when something hits, it's not outside workers all the time, outside by the lower 48 states, coming north to get the jobs that Alaskans are actually put into jobs, something that Greenland will struggle with, something that Northern Canada struggles with as well. There are consortiums that we tap into. There's institutes of engineering that we tap into across the country. Ours is unique because it's an institute of northern engineering. So we have a lot of those schools come to us to try to figure out how not only do they engineer in high latitude and high altitude, they're interested in how the ground is. Look, the ground is literally thawing under our feet. I mean, that's a real statement. Houses are collapsing in real time in the big city of Fairbanks, where I live, and in the rest of Alaska, it's really, really bad. But there are homes that used to be like that, and now they're like this. And people are living in them. And this is not from a disaster. This is from a slow-moving thawing of the land underneath their feet. So we're into engineering on frozen ground, thawing ground, and thawed ground that's not going to get any better. It's just going to get worse. And if you've read the headlines, unfortunately, or seen the papers, you've known that a giant typhoon, another typhoon, typhoons used to come north, and that's where they died. They're not dying anymore. It's like a North Atlantic hurricane. When you have 100-mile-an-hour winds in October in the southwest corner of the state of Alaska that did not see storms like this because storms died, were mitigated by colder water, but then the ice protected that landscape and the ice is gone, what you have are 59 villages that have no road system. You have to fly everything in and out. You barge in your fuel once a year, and they're absolutely devastated. We are currently looking for homes for over 2,000 people from 56 villages or so. And those villages may not ever return, and if they do return, they will look fundamentally different. So this is so they come to us for these engineering hurdles that we have to get over. In the meantime, we're trying to learn, inform others, and we're trying to tap expertise that others have as well. And it's interesting that you get high latitude and high altitude experts dealing with the same thing. There's mountain slopes in the Himalayas that are giving way, and that's the permafrost giving way underneath those slopes as well. Not sure if I answered your question, but I can tell you it's all hands-on. And it's interesting to watch nations and subnationals and universities taking the lead in trying to figure out how to engineer for the future in the northern latitudes. That was a long answer. I am so sorry.
Mike, I want to jump in and do a combination of a question, but also really a thank you for what I think you contributed to this discussion, since you were only here briefly and I was here the whole day. And it shows my age a little bit, but some people here will know there's one of the great bands that ever came out of Bethesda, Maryland, which is the Seldom Seen. And one of their great hits Sunshine includes a line from the frustrated kid talking about his dad, "You can't even run your own life. I'll be damned if you'll run mine." And I listened to you talk about Alaska. And I won't say that the US has failed in Alaska because it's not over yet, but the needs are there. They are very similar, and we're not getting it done. And it strikes me that what you brought to this conference, which is really important for us all to take away, is at a time when some of the silly conversation at the national level is about buying Greenland and turning Canada into the 51st state, maybe we have a lot of work to do in Alaska that would shine a light on our potential and maybe be an example to others of what can be done in the North. That's just a comment, because I think we forget, we think about, oh, the next big thing, and we have something here that we need to do better at.
Should I react to that, Chris? Okay, so thank you. Look, the state of Alaska, I would just say, did not invest its oil wealth for the future. We have a permanent fund. It gives out a dividend to every Alaskan. I get a check every year. That's a great thing. But we never really invested in roads or infrastructure or value add. We should have. There's a hope that if there is a pipeline built for natural gas from the North Slope to port, that we'll get it right this time. That's a hope. The federal government invests a boatload of money in us. Some is strategic, some is not. But we're cyclical. Mostly it has to do with booms and busts. First it was fur, then it was gold, then it was World War II, then it was oil embargoes. I would argue we're now in this post-Cold War phase where you have the nexus of Russia, China, United States. That's what's drawn eyes to the state of Alaska. That's what's drawn eyes to Greenland, maybe even Canada, and elsewhere. We're trying to be a bit smarter about this and leverage. We've always been, to a large degree, a defense military state, have the highest proportion of veterans in the state of Alaska by population than anywhere else in the country. We are a military state. The military has built our infrastructure, whether it's roads or you name it. And so we're trying to be a bit more smart about it. At least these conversations are happening so they won't be sporadic. I've been preaching this idea of Arctic Legos. I know, it's shtick. But if you're going to build something in a state in Alaska or in northern Canada or in Greenland, you best think about building more on that infrastructure than building another one 5 miles away or 100 miles away or 200 miles away. It's too damn expensive. So if you're going to build a port, for instance, in Nome, you have failed, in Mike's opinion. But if you're going to build a complex in Nome that is a port that can have, hey, a cruise ship or two, that's good. A gray hull if we need one, because the Bering Strait is a very dynamic military area. That's a good thing. I want my research vessel to be able to park there. I want the Coast Guard to forward base there, but I also want our Homeland Security there. I want national security there. I want federal and state agencies there. I would like to create something that doesn't exist called the Bering Strait Research Center. The Bering Strait is changing incredibly. So the concept is build complexes that serve a lot of things, because you can't do what you do here in the United States, which is just drive over there. It's impossible. So we're trying to get the equation right going forward, whether it's LNG, critical minerals, and certainly the increased investment in securities. Look, 15 miles from my home is the largest concentration of F-35s anywhere on the planet, and I like hearing them. There's a reason that they're there, and there's a reason that missile defense is 100 miles south of my home. There's 3 different threats at the moment that are close in the neighborhood: North Korea, Russia, China. So I think we need to get this right. Investments made more purposefully. We have been at the end of the chain for a lot of different reasons, but this confluence of Indo-Pacific, North Pacific, NORTHCOM, the combatant commands, see the overlap? It's just a fact. And we have to use this unfortunate political situation, this geopolitical situation, to leverage the state, which, as I said before, is at this nexus of domestic and foreign policy. I think Greenland is at the nexus of domestic and foreign policy for the United States, certainly for Greenland, and I think Canada is as well. Just look at the arc, look where the threats come from. look at the reality and look at the changing Arctic.
Well, that brings us to the conclusion of this year's expert meeting of the Canada-United States Law Institute. Finally, I would like to again thank DLA Piper and its two outstanding partners, Jim Blanchard, Rick Newcomb, and also an associate. Where's Lauren Neely? Oh, she's up working. Okay, billing those times. Very good. I also want to thank the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies, Michigan State University Canadian Studies Center, DLA Piper, and McInnes Cooper. So thank you very much, everyone, for an outstanding conference. I hope to see you all in Cleveland, April 16 and 17, when we take a big look at the U.S.-Canada relationship. And don't forget, on your way out, there are copies of the Canada-United States Law Journal. Finally, for those who want CLE, don't forget to drop your forms off at the table when you leave. Anyway, thanks everyone for coming. Safe travels.